Good evening. I'd like to call to order the James City County Wetlands Board meeting for Wednesday, August 14th at 5 p.m. The responsibility of this board is to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to preserve the wetlands and to accommodate economic activity so as not to prevent their despoliation. Can I get a roll call, please, Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Roadley?
Here.
Mr. Waltrip?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. May?
Here.
Ms. Bowie?
Thank you. First on the agenda, the minutes from the April 10th regular board meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes? Any comments, suggestions, corrections?
Yes, sir.
All right, hearing none, do I have a motion?
So move.
All those in favor of approving the board meeting minutes from April 10th as written, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. The public, now we're going into the public comment period. The public comment period offers a chance for community members to express their opinions. Topics discussed shall not be directly related to specific public hearing items. To participate, speakers must first provide their name and address for the record, please. Are there any members of the public that wish to address the board? Hearing none, seeing none, I will close the public comment period. Next item on the agenda, matters of special privilege. We need to elect a board secretary. Do I have any motions on the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Mr. Wilson.
There's a nomination for Mr. Michael Wilson as board secretary. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Welcome, Mr. Wilson. Now going to the next agenda item, public hearings. The outline for tonight's public hearings will be a staff presentation followed by any questions or clarifications from the board. Then the public hearing will be opened. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. And presentations before the board are subject to time limits. After everyone wishing to speak has done so and discussion among the board has concluded, the public hearing will be closed. First item on the agenda, 113 Godspeed Lane. Ms. Grogine.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Emily Grogine, Watershed Planner, presenting WJPA 24-0014. Ms. Carla Havens, Mid-Atlantic Resource Consulting, has applied for a wetlands permit on behalf of Mr. Gary Nestor for the construction of a bulkhead in a 20-foot by 20-foot platform on property located at 113 Godspeed Lane within the Powhatan Creek watershed. As you can see, there's the parcel outlined in blue here, and then that Powhatan Creek watershed boundary in yellow. Existing conditions on this property include a failed timber bulkhead and platform. According to the submitted drawings, disturbance within the resource protection area for the installation of deadmen and tiebacks is to occur 10 feet landward of the canal for a total of 1,000 square feet of disturbance within the RPA. The disturbed area will be restabilized after the project is completed. Should the bulkhead construction also take place from the uplands, a revised site plan must be submitted for review and possible land disturbing permit. So here we have the project area. You can actually see in the aerial photography where that bulkhead that's existing is failed, along with the topography, along with the floodplain as well. The current proposed work here, we have in yellow that bulkhead along with that 20 by 20 platform. And then this is just a cross section of that bulkhead. As you can see, that 10-foot tieback for the deadmen shown here, along with the denuded areas, will be, stabilized accordingly thereafter. Current site conditions, as you can see from this angle, you can see where that bulkhead's failed. And then this is where it's tying into the adjacent property line, kind of from that same corner. Here's some existing vegetation where that bulkhead's failed. This is from the other side of that bulkhead, kind of from that point where it'd be tying in again to the adjacent property's bulkhead. And then just another shot from that same side of, again, where that bulkhead has failed, the vegetation and platform. Closer up image of the vegetation growing. Let me see. As published in the Virginia Register on July 11th, 2005, the revised Wetland Mitigation Compensation Policy and Supplemental Guides, Regulation 4 VAC 20-390-10. Virginia, as a Chesapeake Bay program partner, is committed to, quote, achieve a no net loss of existing wetlands acreage and function in the signatories' regulatory programs. In order for a proposed project to be authorized to impact wetlands and compensate for the wetland loss in some prescribed manner, the following three criteria must be met. 1, all reasonable mitigative efforts, including alternative sitting, which would eliminate or minimize wetland loss or disturbance, must be incorporated in the proposal. 2, the proposal must clearly be water dependent in nature. And 3, the proposal must demonstrate clearly its need to be in the wetlands and its overwhelming public and private benefits. If the proposed project cannot meet one or more of the above criteria, the project must be denied or must occur in areas outside of wetlands. Should it satisfy all three criteria, however, compensation for the wetland loss is required. The sequence of acceptable mitigation options should be as follows: on-site, off-site within the same watershed, mitigation banks in the same watershed, or a payment of an in lieu of fee. If compensation is required, it should be a condition of the permit. Staff has reviewed the application and finds that this project meets the three criteria outlined above. There are 90 square feet of vegetated wetland impacts associated with this project. Staff will require the purchase of 90 square feet of tidal wetland mitigation from a qualified tidal wetlands mitigation bank and proof of purchase prior to the start of the project. Staff has reviewed the above application and recommends approval of the application as presented. Should the board wish to approve the application, staff suggests the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. All development activities located in the specified flood hazard area shall comply with Article 6, Division 3, Floodplain Area Regulations of the James City County zoning ordinances and receive all required approval and permits prior to commencement of such activities. The applicant must submit a proof of purchase of 90 square feet of tidal wetlands mitigation from a qualified tidal wetlands mitigation bank prior to the issuance of a building permit. The wetlands permit for this project shall expire on August 14th, 2027, if construction has not already begun. And if an extension of the permit is needed, a written request must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than July 3rd, 2027, 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Grosjean. Any questions for county staff? All right. Thank you, Ms. Grosjean. I'd like to now open up the public hearing for this particular item. Anyone from the public or the applicant wish to speak? Thank you. Please present your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Wetlands Board. I'm Carla Havens with Mid-Atlantic Resource Consulting, 1095 Cherry Row Lane, Shacklefords, Virginia, 23156. Thank you, Emily. Excellent, thorough presentation. The only thing I'd like to add is that I have been in contact with Tom Ty, who has a tidal wetlands mitigation bank in Chesapeake. He agreed. He has 90 square feet that he would be happy to sell to us.
Thank you. Any questions?
Is that 20 by 20 platform replacing the pre-existing, or is that new?
It's replacing what's out there.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for your comments. Anyone else wish to speak? All right. Seeing none, hearing none, I will close the public hearing on that item, and the matter is before the board for discussion. There certainly seems to be a necessary project to stabilize the bank. I would certainly support this application.
I agree, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion.
Motion to adopt the resolution to grant the permit request for Wetlands Board, case number WJPA 24-0014.
I think we have a motion to grant the exception, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Oadley,
Yes.
Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. May.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Next item on the agenda, WJPA-24-0015, 114 Godspeed Lane. Ms. Grosjean again.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Emily Grosjean presenting WJPA 24-0015. Ms. Carla Havens, Mid-Atlantic Resource Consulting, has applied for a wetlands permit on behalf of Mr. Gary and Ms. Kathy Nestor for the construction of a bulkhead, 20 by 20-foot platform, 2 5-foot by 30-foot catwalks, and a boat lift on property located at 114 Godspeed Lane within the Powhatan Creek watershed. Again, we see that watershed outline here in yellow with the parcel in question in blue. According to the submitted drawings, disturbance within the resource protection area for the installation of deadmen and tiebacks is to occur 10 feet landward of the canal for a total of 1,100 square feet of disturbance within the RPA. The disturbed area will be restabilized after the project is completed. Should the bulkhead construction also take place from the uplands, a revised site plan must be submitted for review and a possible land disturbing permit. So here we have the project area, that bulkhead, of course, going along the canal here. That tree's kind of blocking where that platform is to be replaced. This is the existing topography on the site, along with current floodplain. Here is the proposed work. In yellow, we have that bulkhead along with that platform and the addition of boat lifts. And then this is, again, a cross-section, just kind of showing, again, that 10-foot deadman tieback along with any disturbed area to be stabilized thereafter. Current conditions, this is a tie-in with the adjacent property owner's bulkhead. As you can clearly see, this bulkhead has failed, which is causing failure of the existing platform as well. This path here will be brought to grade upon completion of whatever work. And then standing on that platform, just from a different angle here, you can see again where that bulkhead has since failed. And just kind of a closer up shot, also showing any kind of vegetation that's grown in as a result of that failure. And then here's just another shot. You can't see it as well due to the vegetation, but again, where the other end of that bulkhead will be tying in with the adjacent property. And then just kind of, again, showing some of that vegetation, and you can kind of make out where that bulkhead has failed. As published in the Virginia Register on July 11th, 2005, the revised Wetland Mitigation Compensation Policy and Supplemental Guidelines, Regulation 4 VAC 20-390-10. Virginia, as a Chesapeake Bay program partner, is committed to, quote, achieve a no net loss of existing wetlands, acreage, and function in the signatories' regulatory programs. In order for a proposed project to be authorized to impact wetlands and compensate for the wetland loss in some prescribed manner, the following 3 criteria must be met. 1, all reasonable mitigative efforts, including alternative sitting, which would eliminate or minimize wetland loss or disturbance, must be incorporated in the proposal. 2, the proposal must clearly be water dependent in nature. And 3, the proposal must demonstrate clearly its need to be in the wetlands and its overwhelming public and private benefits. If the proposed project cannot meet one or more of the above criteria, the project must be denied or must occur in areas outside of wetlands. Should it satisfy all 3 criteria, however, compensation for the wetland loss is required. The sequence of acceptable mitigation options should be as follows: on-site, off-site within the same watershed, mitigation banks in the same watershed, or a payment of an in lieu of fee. If compensation is required, it should be a condition of the permit. Staff has reviewed this application and finds that this project meets the 3 criteria outlined above. There are 10 square feet of vegetated wetland impacts associated with this project. Staff will require the purchase of 10 square feet of tidal wetland mitigation from a qualified tidal wetlands mitigation bank and proof of purchase prior to the start of the project. Staff has reviewed the above application and recommends approval of the application as presented. Should the board wish to approve the application, staff suggests the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. Applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. Development activities located in the specified flood hazard area shall comply with Article 6, Division 3 floodplain area regulations of the James City County zoning ordinances and receive all required approval and permits prior to commencement of such activities. Applicants must submit proof of purchase of 10 square feet of tidal wetlands mitigation from a qualified tidal wetlands mitigation bank prior to the issuance of a building permit. The wetlands permit for this project shall expire on August 14th, 2027 if construction has not already begun. And if an extension of the permit is needed, a written request must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than July 3rd, 2027, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Any questions for Ms. Grosjean?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Grosjean. I'd like to open up the public hearing on this matter. Anyone from the public wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Carla Havens, Mid-Atlantic Resource Consulting. Thank you again for another thorough presentation. Again, I've spoken with Tom Ty, and 10 square feet of tidal wetlands are available at his bank.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you so much. Anyone else wish to speak? Hearing none, seeing none, I will close the public hearing on the matter, and the matter is before the board.
Much needed project.
I agree. You have a motion?
Make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant case number WJPA 24-0015 at 114 Godspeed Lane.
Mr. Wilson, we have a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Roadley,
Yes.
Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. May.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I'm not aware of any board considerations. Leads us to the last item, adjournment.
Sorry. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I wanted to let you know that Ms. Robin Benedict has left employment of the county and is now currently employed down in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we have made a replacement hire for her, and that is Amanda Frazier, sitting in the audience tonight. Wanted to introduce her to you.
Any farewell or anything for Robin, or she's already out of town?
Robin's already out of town.
Okay.
Gainfully employed.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Welcome, Amanda. Look forward to working with you. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
I'll call to order the Chesapeake Bay Board meeting for Wednesday, August 14th. It is the responsibility of this board to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to protect against and minimize pollution and deposition of sediment in wetlands, streams, and lakes in James City County, which are tributaries to the Chesapeake Bay. Roll call, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Roadley,
Here.
Mr. Waltrip,
Here.
Mr. O'Brien, Mr. May,
Here,
Ms. Bowie.
Here.
We have the minutes from the June 12th meeting. Any changes or corrections? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve the minutes from June 12th as presented.
We have a motion to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is our public comment period. The public comment period offers a chance for community members to express their opinions. Topics discussed shall not be directly related to any specific public hearing items. To participate, speakers must provide their name and address for the record. I will open the public comment period. Was anybody care to address the board? Hearing none, I will close the public comment. Agenda is matters of special privilege. Mr. Wilson, looks like we need an election of an officer. Do I have any nominations for board secretary?
Mr. Chair, I would nominate Michael Wilson as board secretary.
I have a nomination of Mr. Wilson as board secretary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Wilson. Tonight's public hearings, as outlined for tonight's public hearings, will be a staff presentation followed by any questions or clarifications from the board. Then the public hearing will be opened. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. Presentations before the board are subject to time limits. After everyone wishing to speak has done so and discussion among the board has concluded, the public hearing will be closed. First item on the agenda is CBPA 24-0018 at 9700 Mill Pond Run. Mr. Wilson.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Mike Wilson, Section Chief, Stormwater Division, here to present case CBPA 24-0018. Mr. Skylar Doughty of Arm Group has applied for a Chesapeake Bay Preservation exception on behalf of Mr. Joe Sanders of Stonehouse 2.0 LLC for encroachments into the RPA buffer for an after-the-fact construction of a patio and retaining wall located at 9700 Mill Pond Run within the Stonehouse subdivision and the Ware Creek watershed. Property is further identified as James City County Real Estate Parcel 05301-0004. Parcel was platted in 1998 prior to the changes to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance. Again, it's construction of a patio and retaining wall after the fact. The Ware Creek watershed boundary is here in yellow, and the golf course property that the patio was built on is outlined here in blue. Furthermore, the exact location of this patio is right here. Some topography of the building, of the property, the resource protection area as it affects this project. It just clips the corner of the patio here. And then the RPA also extends into the current clubhouse and restaurant that was approved prior to the RPA extension in 2004 and is not under discussion tonight. From the site plan, the area in yellow, part of this concrete path, the gravel, part of the patio and retaining wall, all built without permits, and that's what's before the board tonight for an after-the-fact exception request. This right here is a cart path built with the golf course, and that is also, that even though it's in the RPA, it is not under discussion tonight. It was built and approved prior to the RPA extensions in 2004. A couple of site photographs of the area in question. The retaining wall in question is less than 3 foot in height, does not require a building permit, but still required Chesapeake Bay Board approval. Some plantings up here between the retaining wall and the patio, as you can see. And then the gravel path from the cart path down here in the lower right. The building, again, that's the restaurant. And then this sidewalk down into the patio. A couple other views. There's this portion of the patio that's in the RPA. And the view is looking at the 18th green from the golf course. So the total lot size for the property is just under 48 acres, of which 40% is located within the RPA. In December of 2022, officials from the James City County Stormwater Resource Protection Division did receive notice that a concrete patio and retaining wall were being installed on the property without the submission of a Chesapeake Bay Preservation exception, building permits, or an approved site plan. The applicant began the process of obtaining the site plan and permits for the construction of the patio and the retaining wall. If the required site plan had been submitted initially as part of the normal process, staff would have worked with the applicant to adjust accordingly to get the patio out of the resource protection area to the greatest extent practicable. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this work equals 950 square feet of new impervious area within the landward 50-foot RPA. Required mitigation for this amount of impact would be 2.5 planting units, but because this is an after-the-fact exception request, that mitigation requirement is doubled, and we will require 5 planting units. That equates to 5 canopy trees, 10 understory trees, and 15 shrubs. The applicant has committed to providing a planting plan that does meet this requirement, and I have personally seen that planting plan this afternoon in an unofficial submittal, and am confident that they will get that submitted and approved by staff. So staff has evaluated this after-the-fact application and the exception request for the construction of the patio and retaining wall. It does meet the ordinance requirements for sections 2311 and 2314, and it should be heard before the board because they are accessory structures. The board may grant exception to 23.7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions that are outlined in the ordinance. And those are right here on the screen. And that's that the exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief, that it doesn't confer special privilege denied to other property owners similarly situated in the vicinity, that the exception request is in harmony with the purpose and intent and is not a substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and that reasonable and appropriate conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed this application and exception request and determined that the impacts associated with this approval to be minor for the proposed development. If the board wishes to approve this after-the-fact request, staff does recommend the following conditions be incorporated into that approval. That the applicant provide all other necessary local, state, and federal permits as required. That the applicant must submit a mitigation plan of 5 canopy trees, 10 understory trees, and 15 shrubs to the Stormwater Resource Protection Division prior to site plan approval. That the applicant submit a surety of $5,000 in a form acceptable to the county attorney's office to guarantee the mitigation plantings, and that this exception request approval become null and void if the site plan has not achieved final approval by August 14, 2025. Be happy to answer any questions the board may have regarding this matter.
Any questions for Mr. Wilson?
How long ago was this done?
We became aware of it a year and a half ago. So I would suggest to you, Mr. Waltrip, that it started approximately 2 years ago.
Any other questions for staff?
I've got another question. Well, why did they go and do this?
I'm going to defer that question.
Did they assume that their site plan, that they could do that, or it was just negligence, or didn't know that they had to do it, or what?
Those are all excellent questions, Mr. Waltrip, and I will defer that to the applicant or the owner.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We will open the public hearing. Would the applicant or their agent care to address the board? Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Joe Sanders. I want to answer Mr. Waltrip's question in regard to what the definition of identifying wetlands.
Hold on one moment.
Mr. Sanders, can we get your address, please, also for the record?
Where I live?
Yes, sir.
I live in West Point, Virginia.
Mailing address in case they need to say.
3240 King William Avenue.
Thank you, sir.
I was extremely surprised once all of this whole process started that we were within the 100-foot buffer zone. So that there was a question of it even being within the buffer zone. And then after the wetlands identifier who comes out and does her survey to see, to make identification, I went down in the ravine down there, and the ravine is where they're saying that we're too close to, is between the 18th green and the clubhouse. Okay. I walked down in the ravine down there, and I looked at her wetlands flags, and I still don't believe it's a wetland, but she identified it as a wetland, and how she identifies it as a wetland is because of the soil or the type of ferns or whatever else or type of plants that were down there. I don't see it being a wetland. I mean, there's no running water. There's no evidence of running water. How they identify it as a wetland, I don't know. It's beyond my science, beyond my knowledge, and so it's been a process since then, and going through 3 different engineers trying to get to this point. Hired an engineering firm to do this, and in the meantime, they got bought out. And then during that process of being bought out, Mr. Schuyler here is our 3rd or 4th, I think maybe the 4th engineer I've had to deal with on their staff of trying to get this whole process approved. But no, it's not a fact that anything blatantly was overlooked. It's just and I could take you down there now and you would shake your head. I don't see where we're seeing running water or wetlands or anything, but that's my defense. If that's understandable. They say it's they say they're looking at the soil types, and they take samples of the soil itself, and that's beyond my expertise.
Sure, elevation has something to do with it too, probably. Okay,
The matter is in front of the board. Well, let me ask, does anybody else care to speak on this matter? Feel free.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Skylar Dowdy, project engineer with Arms Group, address 9560 Kings Charter Drive, Ashland, Virginia, 23005. Like you saw there, I'm here today with Joe Sanders. After review of the recommendations, just want to let the county know that we're committed to mitigating this disturbance within the RPA with the called for RPA plannings. And like Mike also said here, we've submitted those revised plannings to the county, showing those additional plannings for review. So unless there are any other questions, I've got nothing further to add.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Public hearing is still open, but the matter is before the board for discussion.
Mr. Chair, it seems like the county is working with the applicant for the planting mitigation schedule that is double, and I believe, and I have confidence that that will happen, so I would certainly support this application.
Any other thoughts or comments? I share your thoughts, Mr. May.
and looking at the pictures and stuff, they did a good job on it. I mean, it's not like they didn't do it right. Sometimes these things, black's not always black and white's not always white. And sometimes people lose sight of what needs to be done, and things go the wrong way sometimes. But anyway,
Yeah, this
I'm
had
all
been
right. I'm okay with it.
submitted before it was under construction. I'm sure we would have passed it. Maybe not. We would have pulled it back in from the RPA, but nothing there would indicate that that's necessary.
Very good. If there's no other comments from the public, I will close the public hearing. The matter is before the board. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case number CBPA-24-0018 at 9700 Mill Pond Run.
We have a motion to adopt. Mr. Wilson.
Motion is to adopt, Mr. Waltrip.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. Roadley.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
The next item on the agenda is CBPA 24-0074. This case, well, board members know that I'm actively employed. My employer is a environmental engineering firm here in Williamsburg that materially participated in this case to help the applicant acquire their federal and state permits. Not the CBPA authorization, but we were involved in the project. And on that basis, I am going to abstain from this matter and turn the chair over to Mr. O'Brien, the vice chairman. Mr. O'Brien.
All right, we have CBPA 24-0074 at 1697 River Oaks Road. Mr. Wilson?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Again, Mike Wilson, Section Chief, Stormwater Resource Protection, here to present case CBPA 24-0074, Two Rivers Country Club, Governor's Land Foundation, and their marina dredging spoils project. Mr. Chase Grogg from Land Tech Resources has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Two Rivers Country Club, Governor's Land Foundation, for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the dredge material management area located at 1697 River Oaks Road within the Governor's Land Foundation, or Governor's Land subdivision in the James River watershed. Property is further identified as James City County Real Estate Tax Map number 43201-00011. Parcel was platted in 2001 prior to the changes to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 2004. So again, this application is for the Two Rivers Country Club dredge material management area. The project itself straddles two of the county's major watersheds, the Gordon Creek watershed here, and then the James River watershed to the east. The project entails the dredging of the marina and the pilot channel out to the main channel in the James River, and this is the spoils area management area for those dredge materials, and that is located in the blue on the screen. So again, the proposed area of work just to the east of the RV storage lot, if you know where the project is located, where the marina is located, and then this bridge crossing goes out to Cypress Isle. Topography of the project site, and I'll get into a little bit of the history here in a little bit. The RPA as it affects this project site. And then the floodplain as it affects the project site. I would suggest to you that the mapping on this floodplain line will not be on the interior of the project, which is where the dredge spoils are going to be. The elevation difference is too great. The floodplain elevation surrounding the property is elevation 7. And then conservation easement over top of the entire parcel and the entire wetland RPA system surrounding Governor's Land Foundation property. Those conservation easements were set up in the original layout for Governor's Land in the late 1990s and early 2000s when the project was went before the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission for review and approval. And those conservation easements are laid out in the special use permit conditions and the overall stormwater management for the entire property. From the site plan that was submitted for the proposed work, The RPA line here is in red. RPA impacts would be over here. Little portion of the property where project site is with outside of the RPA, but still falls within the conservation area. Because the project is so linear, it fell onto two separate plan sheets. This is the eastern part, and this part is all within the RPA. Couple project site photos. The existing area is maintained. It's mowed several times a year. And there's a perimeter berm around it that has had pine trees allowed to grow up on it over the years. So in 2000, Two Rivers Country Club applied for a wetlands permit to dredge the marina. The case number was W05-00, and the VMRC permit was 00-0240. And it was determined at that point in time that a wetlands permit from the local wetlands board was not required, as the project did not involve wetlands. However, it did not involve wetlands within the board's jurisdiction. However, it was noted that a land disturbing permit would be required prior to the project starting, and the area for the dredge spoils area was not considered RPA at that time. The public record available for that case made no mention of conservation area or impacts to the conservation area. In 2007, Two Rivers Country Club again applied for a wetlands permit to also dredge the marina. And that case number was W-11-07, and the VMRC number was VMRC 07-0842. It was determined that a wetlands permit, again, was not required from the local wetlands board because there was no, the project fell outside your jurisdiction. It was all below mean low water. Again, it was noted that a land disturbing permit was required prior to the project starting, and that the spoil area was considered RPA at that point in time from the 2004 ordinance change, but a Chesapeake Bay exception was not required at that time. So the matter never came before the board for a legislative act or before staff for an administrative waiver. Total lot area for the dredge spoiled property is 7¼ acres, of which 78% is located within the RPA. The applicant is proposing to reutilize the area between the berms, as was shown on a couple of the photographs, as the dredge material management area. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to just shy of 90,500 square feet of impact. Staff has coordinated with the agent who analyzed all the property owned by Governor's Land Foundation to see if there was other property within Governor's Land that was unencumbered by RPA or conservation area for the dredge materials. And it was determined that there wasn't area sufficient that was not already encumbered by wetlands, RPA, or conservation area. The dredge spoil area does have the capacity to handle one more marina dredging project, and the applicant is proposing no formal replanting of the area because it will have the capacity to have one additional dredge placed in that area. So staff's evaluated this application, and the exception request for the Two Rivers Country Club dredge material management area. And we find that it does meet the ordinance requirements outlined in sections 2311 and 2314 and should be heard by this board, as there's no mechanism in the ordinance to process this application administratively, and the proposed dredge management area does impact the RPA. Again, the board may grant exceptions to sections 23(7) if the application meets the following 5 conditions. And that's minimum necessary to afford relief, that the exception will not confer any special privileges denied to others in the same situation, that the exception request is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the chapter and chapter 23 and is not a substantial detriment to water quality, that the request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and that appropriate conditions would be imposed that will prevent the project from causing a degradation in water quality. The staff's reviewed this application and the exception request and has determined that the impacts associated with this proposal to be major for the proposed development. Staff, if the board wishes to approve the request, staff does recommend the following conditions be incorporated into that approval: that the applicant obtain any other necessary local, state, and federal permits for the project, that the exception request become null and void if the construction has not begun by August 14, 2025, and that a written request for extension be submitted no later than July 3rd, 2025, 6 weeks prior to that expiration date. Be happy to answer any questions that the board may have on this matter.
I've got a couple. Is this going to be hauled in there, pumped in there with dikes, or how is it going to be moved in there?
Mr. Welcher, I'm going to defer that question to the applicant. What I can tell you is that this dredge spoils area does have a containment berm around it. How the material gets there, I will let Mr. Grog address that.
Now, you mentioned one more dredging project. Is that one more beyond the one that's being?
Beyond the current one, that is correct.
So 2 more forthcoming potentially?
Potentially.
Okay, so that's, and the reason for not doing the mitigation of replanting in that area is because there could potentially be another dredge project that comes in there and overwhelms it all.
Yes, that's correct. That's my understanding. If I misunderstood anything of that, Mr. Grog will correct me.
Any more questions from the board? Not hearing any. We will now open the public hearing and entertain comments from either the applicant or the public.
Wait for my PowerPoint. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Good evening, members of the board. I'm Chase Grog with Land Tech Resource, and it's good to see you as always. My address is 205 Bullifonts Boulevard, Suite E, Williamsburg, Virginia, 23188. I'm here tonight representing Governor's Land for the proposed ongoing use of their dredge material management area. In attendance this evening, or in attendance with me tonight, is Josh DeBatis, COO and GM of Two Rivers Country Club, Todd Delano, a member of the Marina Committee, and Tom Numbers, who is a longtime resident and member of the Marina. I'd like to start with some of the history of the area in question. This area has been a farm field from at least 1937 to present day. In 1986, it was still a farm field. In 1996, the field was converted from a farm field to a dredge material management area with berms installed all the way around the facility. In 2002, you can see it was maintained as a field as it was before construction. As staff mentioned, after the 2000 dredging, a land disturbance permit was required and obtained, but there was no RPA permit required due to the fact that the existing wetlands in the woods would have been considered a non-RPA feature. image from 2011, you can again see this area is a maintained field as it was before construction. As staff mentioned, during the 2007 dredging operation, a land disturbance permit was required and obtained, but there was no RPA permit required. The same regulations that existed in 2007 are the same regulations that are in place for this current application. Here's a current 2023 aerial that again reflects the maintained status of this facility for now more than 30 years, or for almost 30 years. As you can see from the GIS base map, this facility is a well-constructed and well-maintained best management practice for a dredge material management area. There are currently no erosion control concerns with the installed berms, and there's an existing wood outlet structure for stormwater. Unlike the original hydraulic dredging operation, which was completed utilizing a pipe to this area, the proposed operation will be completed with a sealed hauling truck. Material will be excavated from the marina and placed on a barge. The barge will then be docked in the marina and place the material into a sealed truck that will haul it to this site. The reason I bring this up is to highlight that the dredging will be done in a controlled manner and there will not be material escaping and going all over. The enclosed truck, along with the existing 6-foot tall berm, go hand in hand with this BMP. For my last slide, I just gave some current pictures, just like the one staff provided to you, that show this area is mowed regularly and has been maintained so the area would be ready to be utilized for the next dredging operation. Governor's Land has also worked with the Army Corps of Engineers since the inception of this area to ensure all proper permits were obtained and remain in place. Finally, I would like to address staff's comment that this area has enough capacity for one more dredging. Based on the calculations by the firm handling the permit drawings, that is a correct statement. What it does leave out, though, is the fact that in a dredge material management area, disposal of the material can be excavated out at a later date and removed to an off-site property. As staff had mentioned, there's no other place on Governor's Land property to place the material, and it would need to be taken to an appropriate off-site location. Governor's Land has talked about this solution for years and has planned to do this once it becomes an actual need. Since the facility has been utilized 3 times and a proposed 4th, it has not been an action they have needed to take. In conclusion, we request approval of this exception request for the continued use of this facility. There will be no degradation to water quality due to the existing BMP features in place. Upon completion of the project, the site will be established back to a field and maintained for future use. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other
Thank you.
members from the public like to address this particular case? Not seeing any, I will, actually we'll have a discussion amongst the board before I close the public hearing. So, board members?
Mr. Chair, this seems like a well-designed and historically stable site. I would be in support of the application.
One thing about, you had a dredging job at the marina down in James City, on Powhatan Creek, and the channel coming into Governor's Land, you're dealing with 2 different kinds of material. Mainly that's sand, and that project will go a lot better as far as dredging because you won't have the mixing of the mud from the banks and stuff with it. So the project would go the way he explained, probably pretty good because you'll have solids going in there and not a whole lot of water. And you have something to run on because it's mainly going to be mainly sand. But I've done that kind of work before in those marinas and stuff. So I think you got a good project there, and I think you're handling it in the right way, so I would support that.
Got a question for staff, if that's allowed. Mr. Wilson, I'm not sure if you mentioned it or not, but was there mitigation required for this?
There was no mitigation proposal to evaluate.
And what is your thought process on and mitigation required for this project?
It's highly unusual not to require mitigation for impacts to the RPA. There's interesting question.
Well, I mean, not to cut you off, but you kind of briefly skirted around the issue with respect to your statement that mitigation would not occur because there's a potential for it to be reused again, and it kind of defeats the purpose. But is that a factor in this? And we'll let the public comment on this as well.
I would defer that to Mr. Grog. We did discuss various options for mitigation, including replanting, an in lieu fee, if you will, that we've done on several large commercial projects. And Mr. Grog could better explain his client's
Okay,
stance on that issue.
all right, sounds fair. Thanks.
So I think, Mr. O'Brien, to go back, so we did talk about it, and I think a lot of it stems from going back to the 1937 photo. This has been a field since I can get a photo of the property, and this is basically a quote-unquote asset to the marina to be able to have a place where you don't have a bunch of trucks driving a long distance to dispose of material. They have somewhere close by. Yes, it eventually will have to be mucked out, which kind of alleviates that, but the point here being this is a facility that has been maintained, has been worked on, and the intent is they would like to continue to maintain it. And so thus planting a bunch of plants over top of it or doing mitigation kind of defeats that goal and that purpose. So our goal with this meeting, especially after kind of what happened in 2007, is to more establish this formally as an ongoing dredge material management area that can be utilized for many years to come, as it has been for the last 30 years.
Okay, so the precedent was established early on, and you're continuing down that path.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that it hasn't been woods for a very long time.
Right. Okay, thank you. Back to board discussion. Any more internal thoughts?
So, Mr. O'Brien, I did visit the site yesterday. The berms are very stable. The temporary vegetation that's there is, provides good cover at the moment. I'm not sure exactly what type of mitigation would be called for. That was requested. It looked like a pretty stable site to me.
Internal discussion, in which case I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion for this particular application.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board, case number CBPA-24-0074 at 1697 River Oaks Road.
We have a motion to adopt. Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Roadley,
Abstain.
Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Ms. O'Brien, Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Thank you. So in the next case, actually, I'm turning it back over to Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Hurley.
O'Brien. Appreciate it. Thank
Have
you
one
all
case.
for attending. The next item on the agenda is CBPA 24-0078 at 92506 Mount Zion Road, a sanitary sewer trunk line. Ms. Grogan.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Emily Grogine, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 24-0078. Mr. Jeff Huntelman, Land Planning Solutions Incorporated, has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of MCP Stonehouse LLC for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the installation of a sanitary sewer trunk line located at 9256 Mount Zion Road within the Stonehouse subdivision in the Ware Creek watershed. Just as a note, best management practices, or BMPs, were included in the initial advertisement published for this case. Stormwater BMP outfall impacts and head cut repair impacts are approved administratively. Therefore, the inclusion of these items was an oversight by staff and is not to be taken into consideration by the board for this case. The parcel was platted in 2022 after changes to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 2004. The total lot size of this property is 155.45 acres, of which 35% is located within the RPA. The applicant is proposing to install a sanitary sewer trunk line. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 8,720 square feet. Mitigation for these impacts will require an open space easement equal to more or less 23,000 square feet beyond what the Virginia Runoff Reduction Method, or VRRM, requires. The required mitigation will be addressed at the subdivision plat stage. So just as a general oversight, because it is such a large parcel, the parcel itself is here. However, this phasing of construction where the sanitary sewer trunk line will be installed is to occur in this little blacked out portion here. Just moving in closer, again, we see that Weir Creek watershed boundary in yellow with the parcel enlarged in blue. To bring it in further, the location of the proposed work, is to take place in this general area. Here's the existing topography along with the current resource protection area. And that should say floodplain, but as you can see, it's not within any floodplains. The impacts that we're assessing for the sake of this case include the 50-foot landward and 50-foot seaward. The actual wetland impacts, if any, are covered under a permit and are not to be considered by the board. This is also just a cross-section of the proposed sanitary sewer trunk line, the 300-foot timber pipe bridge. And then some existing site photos, just very heavily vegetated. Not much to see as of right now. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the installation of a sanitary sewer trunk line. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11, 23-14, and should be heard by the board because the construction of a sanitary sewer trunk line cannot be approved administratively. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions outlined. I clicked a little too soon, but you all have a placard in front of you. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be major for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. The dedication of an open space easement equal to more or less 23,000 square feet beyond what the VRRM required must be addressed in the subdivision plat prior to the approval of said plat by staff. The exception request approval will become null and void if construction is not begun by August 14th, 2025, and written requests for an extension to an exception must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than July 3rd, 2025, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Any questions for staff? Thank you, Emily. I will open the public hearing. Would the applicant or their agent care to address the board? Would anybody else care to address the board? I will pull the matter back to the board.
Have to have somewhere to do these utilities, period.
Seems straightforward.
Yep, I would agree.
Yep, I'm also in agreement.
Very good. With that, I will close the public hearing. The matter is before the board. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to adopt resolution to grant case number CBPA 24-0078 at 92506 Mount Zion Road.
Mr. Wilson?
Motion is to approve. Mr. Waltrip?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Ms. Bowie?
Yes.
Mr. Roadley?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Next item on the agenda is CBPA 24-0089 at 112 North Turnberry Drive. Mr. Wilson.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Mike Wilson again, here to present case CBPA 24-0089, 112 North Turnberry for Mr. David and Ms. Karen Hescox. Mr. Corey Bell of Williams Landscape and Design has applied for Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Mr. David and Ms. Karen Hescox for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a patio, walkway, and retaining wall located at 112 North Turnberry within the Fords Colony subdivision and the Powhatan Creek watershed. Property is further identified as James City County Real Estate Tax Map 37212000004. Parcel was platted in 2000 prior to the changes in the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 2004. Again, this is for the construction of a patio, walkway, and retaining wall. Similar to the first case that the board heard tonight, this is also an after-the-fact application. Project site located within the Fords Colony subdivision and Powhatan Creek watershed, outlined here in blue. Closer view of the property. This is before the house was built. The property is located on a BMP, drains from the street down to the water, as shown here with the topography. And the RPA buffer as it affects this property. This project did come before the board prior for the construction of the house, as it was within the seaward 100-foot seaward buffer. Seaward buffer line shown here running through the middle of the house, and then the landward RPA buffer closer to the street. As you can see, the entire house was in the buffer. This portion of the project went before the board prior, was approved. The also approved at that time was a patio here in yellow. Some steps here in yellow, and then a patio over here that's coincident with the orange. The orange is what has been constructed, with the exception of this portion of the project has not been finalized pending the outcome of this hearing. Also, not previously approved was this extension of this retaining wall here, and that is also before the board tonight. A couple site photographs. This is that retaining wall that was extended. Holding back the grade from the adjacent property here. The project, the sidewalk as it comes around the side of the house, this is the portion I pointed out that was not yet built. You can also see this is the one corner here that had that patio that had been approved, and that patio is not built. Going around the rear of the property, oops, going around the rear of the property, that's the walk leading to the walkout basement here. And then these pillars support a first floor structure of the house, and so this is a covered patio here, and that had been approved prior as well. From the pillars to this leading edge of the retaining wall, That's what's under the board's purview or discussion tonight, as well as this portion of the project. This retaining wall is also up for discussion. It's necessary for the patio as constructed. The original proposal, I'm going to backtrack here a little bit. The original proposal had a retaining wall, and I forgot to point this out. It did have a retaining wall originally in this location. That retaining wall, sorry, things are really touchy. That retaining wall was not built and instead goes this way. And that helped reduce the amount of fill in the backyard that was required to construct the plan as approved originally. Otherwise, they'd have had to bring this grade up to this elevation here, and that would have extended impacts further into the RPA from the grading. So the total lot size of this property is 0.48 acres, of which 88% is located within the RPA. The construction of the home with a porch and retaining wall was previously approved under CBPA 23-0044. Wetlands along the rear property line prompted staff to request an affidavit be recorded in the courthouse because of the environmental sensitivity of this lot. Property owners did record that affidavit for the previously approved impacts of 3,525 square feet to the landward 50-foot RPA and 796 square feet of impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA for a total of 4,321 square feet of impacts. The mitigation plan that was required and approved at that time was also part of that affidavit and did require 11 planting units. In June of 2024, Stormwater Resource Protection staff received notice that a walkway, patio, and retaining wall were being installed on the property without the submission of a revised Chesapeake Bay Preservation Exception request. The applicant stopped work on the property and began the process of obtaining that approval for the unapproved portions of the previous project. Existing conditions on this lot now include 3,500 square feet of impervious cover in the landward 50-foot RPA and 825 square feet of impervious cover in the seaward 50-foot RPA. For a new addition of 276 square feet additional impervious cover to the seaward 50-foot RPA. The required mitigation for this amount of additional impervious area equals 1 planting unit. Because this exception request is after the fact, staff does require that mitigation to be doubled to 2 planting units. And should this board approve the application, we also request a new affidavit be recorded. The applicants have proposed a mitigation plan consisting of 11 canopy trees, 9 understory trees, and 42 shrubs. And that application meets the county mitigation requirements. I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble focusing on the staff report here. However, the proposed mitigation does not meet the standalone mitigation requirements of the original exception request, and staff would require revised mitigation planting units of 2 additional planting units, 2 canopy trees, 4 understory trees, and 6 shrubs. And we would require a revised mitigation plan prior to the release of the existing surety, guaranteeing a total of 13 total planting units. So staff's evaluated the application and the exception request for the construction of this patio, walkway, and retaining wall. The application does meet the ordinance conditions outlined in sections 2311 and 2314 and should be heard before the board because they are accessory in nature. The board may grant exception to 23-7 as previously stated, outlined in the ordinance, and that's if the exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief, that the granting of this exception would not confer any special privileges on other property owners in a similar situation, that the exception request be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23, not a substantial detriment to water quality, that this request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and that reasonable and appropriate conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation in water quality. So staff's reviewed this application and has determined that the impacts associated with the proposal to be minor for the additional impacts. If the board wishes to approve the request, the staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into that approval. That they get any other necessary local, state, and federal permits as required for the project, that a revised affidavit be recorded in the Williamsburg-James City County Courthouse prior to the release of surety, that a surety of $2,000 to guarantee the plantings of 2 additional planting units, that the applicants submit a revised application mitigation plan equaling 13 planting units, that the exception request become null and void if construction is not begun by August 14, 2025, and that written requests for an extension to this exception be submitted no later than July 3, 2025. Be happy to answer any questions the board may have regarding this matter.
Any questions for staff?
So you came up with 13 because of the 11 previous, plus the 1 additional, plus the 1 because of after the fact.
Correct.
Mr. Wilson, could you go back to the slide that shows the original retaining wall? So if I understood you correctly, they were authorized to disturb up to and including that original retaining wall.
Yes, sir.
The disturbance has been reduced, but the impervious area has increased.
That is correct.
Thank you.
What you would have had if they would have included all this, we probably would have passed this originally to do what they want to do right now. I think looking at the whole project, whoever did the work did a real nice job. I mean, it's a quality job. The picture there shows the pillars. Come back, yeah, right there. The original was there where the pillars are. That was all cut out. That was what was added there. So you really had, maybe you didn't have any way to even get around the house, because I see there's a walkway that comes all the way around and ties into that. Am I correct on that?
You are correct.
So it made it more feasible, livable, whether they had a wheelchair or whatever to access in and out of it if they had a fire or whatever. So they made the place more livable, and they did a good job on it. It's a shame that they didn't include that originally when they went for the site plan.
Any other questions for Mr. Wilson? Thank you. I will open the public hearing. Would the applicant or their agent care to address the board?
My name's Aaron Williams. I'm with Williams Landscape and Design, and our address is 1554 Penniman Road, Williamsburg, Virginia. And we are the landscape company who installed the patio, plantings, and the entire project. Mike, is there a way that we can show that drawing one more time? And can I point with this? Thank you. So first of all, Michael did a great job explaining the entire project. I just want to point out a couple of quick things or reinforce what Michael already said. So this existing pre-approved retaining wall, not existing, but pre-approved retaining wall would have been behind what the builder had put in as a chain link fence that wrapped to protect the RPA. So let me explain a little bit about the previous submission to where we got today, and I will apologize, we didn't follow the procedure we should have followed. We didn't get involved in the project until probably April, and there was a severe deadline by the builder to get approvals, get everything done. And we were told repeatedly, hey, this site plan's good, do the site plan. Our mistake, and we do apologize, we didn't do what should have been done, which was come back to you and say, hey, we'd rather not take this wall back here because it would require us to remove about 7 established trees, and we don't want to go beyond the chain link fence. So that was our fault, and we apologize. As Michael said, we did bring the wall in here, which is, you can kind of see it. It fits. It's actually not extending the length of the wall. It just moved it closer. And then to Mr. Waltrip's point, the homeowners had let us know, they do have 2 sons, and they live in the downstairs basement area. And if there was a fire, it would be safer if they could make it out to the road, to meet in case of an emergency where the fire truck would be or whatever. So that was part of it. The other 2 quick things to note, and again, I apologize, we did make a mistake. We're not trying to, we are asking for an exception after the fact. But I would point out that this impervious area was already approved because it's under roof. This was allowed, and that rectangle, this square here almost equals this rectangle. This was pre-approved. So we're really at the mercy of the board to ask for completing between basically here and here. And then the last thing on this retaining wall here, again, pressures from the builder, it's no excuse. I should have come before you. But this property is owned by Mr. Desmond and Mrs. Desmond. They are significantly higher than this driveway. And we just didn't have any way to retain that. And again, not right on our part. We should have come before you. But we just had to do something to hold that earth. So we should have done that right, and we apologize. Beyond that, the planting units, we did fit all the planting units in. It was tough to do it without, taking up too much space. And again, that chain link fence wrapped very close in here, and that was kind of like please don't go beyond this. Everything from the chain link fence forward was red clay, nasty dirt, very steep. At the first time I showed up on the property, from this back door here down to where the chain link fence was very, very steep. It was impassable. Like we had a tough time just walking around there trying to get to it. So again, not right, but the intention wasn't to cause any harm. It was just to bring this a little closer, make it a little bit more usable in those things. So I'll take any questions you guys have for me.
Any questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Would anybody else care to address the board? Feel free to come forward. Your name and address for the record, please.
Daniel Dead, 16 North Turnberry, next to and I lived there for 22 years with an empty lot. We had some concern, obviously, when this construction was started. We met Dave and Karen. We spoke to them at length. They have kept us informed of everything they're doing. If we weren't happy with it, we would let them know. They might change it, they might not, but we've had a good relationship. We were concerned because it was an empty lot. We didn't have to worry about it. Now, Everything's coming down. There's going to be a house there. Will we have water concerns? We don't have any concerns. Anything we were concerned with, anything we asked, we got. I think you should really consider giving approval to what they want to do because they're first class. We have no complaints. We could have complaints, but we don't. They're nice people. They mean to do it the right way. In my opinion and my wife's opinion, they're doing it the right way. We would complain because, you know, we've lived there for a long time, and if we weren't happy, we would complain. We've asked for some things to make us happy. They're doing it. So I would hope you'd go along with them because they're good people. They'll be great people for the neighborhood. And I don't know, do you have a question for me?
Thank you, sir. I do not. Any of the board members?
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out. Would anybody else care to address the board?
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Richard Christensen. I live at 108 North Turnberry on the other side of the property here. And when they first started, I was concerned about, the location of the house because the drainage between, it'd come off of the front yard and go down between my house. And I was worried about runoff and erosion. And they've really addressed it. They went through and they've done an excellent job. And so any of the issues I brought up, like Mr. Desmond said, they've addressed it. They've kept me informed. The builders come over and kept me informed of it. So, and then, when they originally building, the builder was saying, hey, we don't go beyond this chain link fence because that's RPA. And I think they've done an excellent job of not even going over there. And so I was looking at it and saying, hey, they're doing a great job. They're staying where they're supposed to stay. Like I said, I don't have any, they're good neighbors. They really addressed any issues I had. And I'm not worried about any runoff because we had a torrential rain, as you all know here, probably 3 weeks ago. And I went out to look and say, hey, is that water going where it's supposed to go? And it was. And I didn't see any erosion from any of it, even when it got down into the lower area. So I don't have any problem with this. I urge you to approve it as it stands.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Christensen? Thank you, sir, for your coming out. Appreciate it. Would anybody else care to address the board? All right, the matter is in front of the board for consideration. Any thoughts or comments?
I'll make a couple of comments. Usually you have the audience talking against the project. It's very seldom I see everybody's in agreement with what's going on, and good neighbors next to neighbors mean a whole lot when you're living in a development. And it looks like it's only one lot. That one lot is one that hadn't been, that I showed on my plan, it hadn't been developed, but now it has been developed with a house. And they've done a real good job on it. It looks good. Everybody's happy. I would support it.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. The matter is before the board. Do I have a motion? Or comment?
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case number CBPA 24-0089 at 112 North Turnberry Drive.
Mr. Wilson, motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. Roadley.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Any issues or any items under board considerations, Mr. Wilson?
There will not be a September board meeting for either Wetlands or Ches Bay.
Very good. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned.